My name is Agent Greg Lewis with the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission. Today we're going to be conducting a TABC Talks and be discussing preventing sales to intoxicated persons. We'll go rolling into it. If you all have questions, please go ahead and type in, and we'll try to get answers to you as soon as possible while we're doing the presentation. And if it's something we don't have an answer for immediately, then there will be an email address at the very end, and you can send in your questions that way, and we'll reply back to you as we get those. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll begin on this. So this is a continuing series on teaching alcohol laws and know-how series. And again, like I said, today we'll be discussing preventing sales to intoxicated persons. All right, so the following, I'm going to read a few things, our disclaimer. The following agency guidance was developed to improve internal and external communications and ensure a more consistent application of the TABC statutes and rules. This guidance reflects appropriate processes, requirements, and interpretations based on the general situations presented herein. This guidance may not apply to every situation. If you have questions about this guidance, how this guidance applies to your specific circumstance, please contact TABC directly. So, you may interact with us, like I said, using the chat feature located on the toolbar at the bottom of the presentation window. If you have experienced any technical issues, visit Zoom's Help Center at the following link that's provided there. Let's start with some basics here. We're going to cover the definitions, licensees and permittees, intoxication, violations, consequences of violations. We'll also discuss trace investigations and protecting your business and the public. So, licensee or permittee. Based on it as it's written in the Alcoholic Beverage Code, a licensee or permittee is a holder of a TABC issued license or permit provided in its code, or any agent, servant, or employee of that person. The definition of intoxication comes from the Texas Penal Code and is not having normal use of mental and physical faculties by the introduction of alcohol, controlled substance, a drug, dangerous drug, or a combination of two or more of those substances or any other substance into the body. Another caveat is having an alcohol concentration of 0.08 or more. One of the things we need to cover on that is it's not always going to be alcohol. We have to take in consideration other substances that may combine with that. So as far as criminal violations for members of the public intoxication is a criminal offense in the state of Texas, a Class C misdemeanor, is typically a citation. And the person might be released to someone else or taken into custody and monitored for a few hours before they're released. It occurs when a person appears in a public place while intoxicated to the degree that the person may endanger the person or another. So a public place includes a license or permanent premises. So a person who commits a Class C misdemeanor, if they're intoxicated in a licensed premise, is intoxicated in the public place. Do you have any questions up to this point for definitions? Okay, so moving along, a criminal administrative violations that occur for licensees and permittees. So you guys understand, it is a violation to sell alcoholic beverages to an intoxicated person. A violation carries a criminal administrative penalties. So on a criminal side, selling with criminal negligence an alcoholic beverage to an intoxicated person occurs when a person fails to meet a level of care that an ordinary person under these conditions would have met, when they refuse to overserve patrons, when looking for signs of intoxication, when they fail to train staff and encourage responsible consumption by patrons. So those are basic stuff you have to do as a seller or server of alcoholic beverages. And the resulting criminal penalty, it's a misdemeanor, punishable by a fine of not less than $100, more than $500, by confinement in jail, or not more than 1 year in jail, and or both. Now, it's a violation to sell alcoholic beverage to an intoxicated person, and so on the administrative side of it, selling, serving, or delivering an alcoholic beverage to an intoxicated person can result in a first violation fine of 8 to 12 days for suspension, or pay in lieu of that a fine of $300 per day. So another caveat to it is you're also placed on what we call a priority list. And while you're on a priority list for about 6 months, you're going to be subject to follow-up operations that are typically going to be involving, again, like selling to intoxicated persons, to make sure that you're in compliance with the Alcoholic Beverage Code. Another thing to consider as well, it's a violation to be intoxicated at your place of employment on or off duty. As employees, you guys carry more responsibility to be responsible sellers. And with that, the criminal penalty is a fine of not less than $100, no more than $1,000, and can also include a confinement in jail up to 1 year. Do we have questions on any of that to this point? Please feel free to ask. Okay. I'll give you all a second here to see. Okay, and moving along. So consequences of a violation. Violations at a license location may result in different things. Like I said, criminal violations, administrative violations, and a priority list. So with the criminal violations, criminal charges that are brought against the employee sold, served, or delivered, and it can result in being fined or jailed. Yet administrative violations that may result in civil penalty or require license or permit to be refused, suspended, or canceled. So as far as a priority location, you're going to have, based on the criminal and administrative violations, you'll have a business that have a recent violation on their record. They become priority locations, as I explained. Those businesses with violations that pose a risk to public safety. And in both cases, the businesses will be subject to follow-up operations by TABC to ensure the violation is a one-time incident and not a pattern of behavior. Now, another thing, and we've launched this week as well, is trace investigations. In the event that an intoxicated person involved in an accident or incident resulting in serious bodily injury or death, an investigation is conducted to determine the source of the alcoholic beverages that were consumed by an intoxicated driver, determine if the source violated the law when providing alcoholic beverages. So we're looking where it came from. And nowadays it's easier than ever for us with the technology that we have available to us. And we're going to use various resources. The initial law enforcement agency that's on scene. We'd also pull video from the location or from other sources that are nearby, credit card receipts, telephone records. There's so many different ways that we're able to investigate these to make that determination. As far as the permitted location, we're going to be looking at the on or off premise consumption and potential violations or consequences for a permitted source. So it could be criminal violations, could also be administrative violations that are brought against the location. And then of course, they're also looking at civil dram shop action brought by the victims in this situation, which can result in substantial financial liability, as those penalties or those fines are not levied by TABC. Those go through a civil trial situation. The questions on any of this to now? Okay, so moving on. Some of the things you can do as a retailer, and you can get safe harbor protection. And there's certain things you have to do in order to get safe harbor. Safe harbor applies for basically two types of violations: for sell to minors and sell to intoxicated persons. And on a safe harbor, basically the 6 things in order to make the case from an administrative case to a restraint case, because we understand there's going to be situations to where you can't necessarily be there next to your employee at all times. And the 6 things are, first and foremost, the employer requires the employees to attend to receive certification from a TABC approved sales server training program. All the employees engaged in sales, service, or delivery of alcoholic beverages and their immediate management are certified within 30 days at a higher date. The seller server at fault actually obtains certification and is not an officer of the company. The employer has written policies and responsible alcohol and service consumption and ensures that each employee has read and understands those policies that are in place. And the employer has not directly or indirectly encouraged employees to violate the law. Finally, there have not been 2 or more of these types of violations in the last 12-month period. And like I said, in this type of situation, typically what we'll do with the case is, instead of going for administrative violation, we turn into what we call a restraint case. And on some of those, there may be some caveats. We may ask your employees to sit through a retailer education and awareness program with TABC, or some other caveats, depending on a case-by-case basis. So the same things you can do is make sure you guys support your employees. Be there, support them, back them. When you're dealing with intoxicated people, look for the signs. Your employees should be able to recognize these signs of intoxication. The customer's leaning against structures. They're having difficulty sitting in a bar stool. They're falling down, missteps. They become overly excited, confused state of mind. They speak loudly or profoundly, or profanely, slurred speech, bloodshot, glassy eyes, droopy eyelids, tired appearance, slow, deliberate movements. There's lots of additional signs. If your instinct is that the person may be intoxicated, trust your instinct. It's better to err on the side of caution than to take the risk and sell alcoholic beverages to an intoxicated person. And remember, the intoxication doesn't always have to be alcohol. It can be other substances. But once you serve to that person, you are now taking on the responsibility of that intoxicated person being served on your licensed premise. Something else to remember too, it's illegal to sell, serve, or offer to serve more than 2 drinks to a single consumer at one time. There are exceptions to it. So it is legal to sell, serve, or deliver alcoholic beverages in a pitcher, carafe, buckets, where you have bottles, etc., to 2 or more consumers at one time. Another example would also be, say, for instance, bottle service. But you have to be cognizant of the amount of alcohol that's served and the number of people that are there receiving the alcohol. So, and be aware of serving sizes. Beer sizing can be different. It can be 16, 24, 32, etc. And all these can basically be considered more than 1 drink. So you have to be cognizant of that, of how much you have served somebody or a group of persons for that. Basic things as employees can do to be responsible. Check the IDs. What IDs do you accept? When do you refuse sales? How to refuse sales? How to deal with difficult customers? When to get a management involved? When to call law enforcement? The basic things: slow down, look for indicators, speak with your patrons, and observe their demeanor. But more than anything, back your employees. If your employees suspect something isn't wrong, back your employee up, especially if you suspect that person may be intoxicated. Any questions on this till now? Okay. And moving on. So some advice for management is take responsibility for your employees' actions when they're serving alcoholic beverages. Support your employees. If an employee feels a patron is intoxicated and they should refuse a sale, support your employees. And go ahead and be there and discreetly handle the stuff if you need to. Inform your staff. Wait until the customer orders another beverage to refuse that service. Discreetly pull them off. Isolate that customer. Tactfully refuse that sale. Tell them, I'm sorry, explain to them you want them to come back, whatever it takes. Log the incident, record it. If it becomes a situation where it might be a breach, make sure you report that to TABC in a timely manner. Contact local law enforcement if needed. Ensure that your staff are monitoring your customers, taking notice of actions, behavior. It doesn't necessarily have to be just your bartenders. It can be your servers. It can be other staff, people on the floor, your door, your people at your door. All these people have an integral part in the sale of alcoholic beverages to your patrons. So provide ongoing education to your employees. Ensure responsible service. We have a YouTube channel which has many videos on there that covers how we conduct inspections, prevention of overservice, how much you sell or serve your patrons, marketing practices, checking IDs. You can also contact your local TABC office and schedule a REAP, or a Retail Education Awareness Program training for your management and employees, and that's free of charge. Sour server training. The TABC website, if you go there, you can see there's a list of places that offer these sour server approved training courses. So as employers, you can also check your employee status to make sure that your employees stay in compliance with the sour server training. You go to our public website, you do a public inquiry search, and you can search for your employees to make sure that all your employees are current. So that way, if one does sell, then you can qualify under safe harbor. Very easy stuff. At the very least, contact your local TABC office. So we also have an app that is up and running. You can download that from the Google App Store and as the Apple's App Store as well. It's excellent tool that you all can use for that, for promoting voluntary compliance with the law. providing employees the necessary tools, skills, and knowledge in order to ensure responsible alcoholic beverage service and to comply with the Alcoholic Beverage Code. So is there any questions or anything we can address further? All right. If there's any questions to it, please email us. The email link is there, the stakeholders at tabctexas.gov, and appreciate your time.